Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of the Atheist Experience. It's January 4th, 2009. Happy New Year, everybody. I'm Matt Dillahunty, joining me this week after a far too lengthy period away. Jeff D.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome back. We got lots of email. There are people like, hey, you know, I watched some of the old archives and stuff. When's Jeff coming back? Well, the answer is now.
Yeah.
And back in the regular co-host rotation, and Jeff's got something he wants to talk about, and we'll get to it shortly. Let me get the announcements out of the way. This is a live call-in show done over Public Access Television out of Austin, Texas. For more information about the show, you can go to atheist-experience.com. We're sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. The ACA has weekly meetings every Sunday at Romeo's on Barton Springs Road, beginning at around 11:30. Except for the first Sunday of the month when we host a lecture series at the Austin History Center at the corner of 9th and Guadalupe, beginning at 12:15. Today was the first Sunday of the month. It's also the first Sunday of the year. Woohoo! And we're on a countdown to something, but I'll talk about that later. And the lecture this morning, we didn't actually have a lecturer, so we showed a screening of The Blind Watchmaker from in the late 80s, I guess, was a take on Dawkins' book where he talks about science and evolution. The February lecture, the first Sunday in February, we didn't have a lecturer for, so I'm actually going to do it, and it's not going to be a cheesy lounge act magic show, but I am going to do some magic and mentalism and specifically talk about how the brain goes about solving problems and why we're fooled and why it is, I think, that so many magicians that I encounter are in some cases outright atheists and outspoken about it, but at a minimum are extremely good critical thinkers, skeptics, and are generally skeptical of claims of the paranormal, of religious claims, etc. I think there's an inside track to finding out how people fool themselves and exploiting it and watching other people exploit it, whether you're seeing, you know, perhaps the John Edwardses of the world claiming to speak to dead people or hear from dead people or pantomime with dead people playing, I don't know, I'm getting an S, is there somebody with an R in your name, that type of stuff. So that's what we're going to do a little bit in February. And in addition to the lecture series, after the program's over, we get together and go to Threadgill's on Riverside. Any atheist or atheist-friendly person is welcome to join us. The address is on the bottom of the screen. If you'd like to come down and have a drink, have a dinner, talk, you're more than welcome to. But if you're coming down to preach, proselytize, provoke, punch, whatever, don't bother. Just call into the show as soon as we put the number up. We'd like to hear about what you believe and why. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the phone calls in just a second. The website for the Atheist Community of Austin that sponsors this program is www.atheist-community.org. And right now I'm ticking off all the guys in the back room because I changed the order of the announcements and I didn't tell them. In addition to this program, the ACA also sponsors a bi-weekly internet audio podcast called The Nonprofits. That's Prophets. You can go to nonprofitsradio.com for more information. It's hosted by Dennis LeBay, features myself, Schilling, Russell Glasser, Thad Engling on occasion. Jeff was on for the final show 2008, and we're going to force him to get back on there on occasion when it fits his schedule. You know, I'm not going to strong-arm you into being on every time, but there's that. If you go to the ACA website, you can get to the Nonprofits website and to the Atheist Experience TV show website. You can also find out more about what the ACA is doing. There's a frequently asked questions page there. There's several contact forms and information. You can email tv@atheist-community.org. That goes to myself, most of the people behind the scenes. We can't promise to answer every one of them. We do read all of them that don't get eaten by the spam filter monster. So if you want to avoid that, you can put NPR or AETV in the subject line, and that should get by most of it. We do a really good job of answering quite a few of them, and that's because I'm not the only one that answers them. So there have been some people who wrote in and got an answer from somebody else and then said, no, I was specifically wanting Matt to answer. Thanks, but I'm not a guru, and I don't have time to answer all of them. I answer an insane amount of email as it is already. But if it's really important, you know, I'll usually make some kind of exception. Things that are going on in the ACA, now that we've finished 2008 and we've got all of our past events out of the way, there's going to be another Godless Pub Crawl coming up. I'll get the date as we get closer to it. It was given to me this morning. I think it's in mid-March, but I'm not sure. The regular things, we have the street cleanup. You can find out more information if you're in the Austin area and would like to help out. We've got two locations, one north and one south. The sign I don't think is up for the south location yet, but we go out there. We're only required to do it, I think, 4 times a year, but we go out every month to one of the 2 streets, so they're each getting hit 6 times a year, and pick up the trash and keep Austin beautiful. The entire theme behind it. We've got a blood drive coming up. We do this every 6 weeks or so, and we started something new. And if you come to any of the ACA events and you have donations of food that you'd like to bring with you, you can do that. We can collect them at lectures, at after-show dinners. Just get with anybody there who's on the board of the directors or is involved in the charity projects, Chuck Clark among others, and Mike Swift and Lisa Mays. They're spearheading this project, and when we get enough food items collected, we'll take them out and distribute them to those who are needy. I think that's all of the actual announcements. If I've forgotten anything, it's my fault, and we'll do it some other time. So welcome back.
Thank you, Matt.
Oh, we've replaced Muhammad on the show temporarily, or maybe permanently. I don't know, but I have this beautiful.
People are probably wondering what this strange
beautiful hand-knitted flying spaghetti monster that my girlfriend brought to me, and so it's on the show. See? The other thing that I want to mention was telephone calls. Last week, and I don't normally do this, so I don't want to make a huge deal out of it, but last week, last week we had a caller named Ed who I invited to call back after some would say rudely hung up on him, and he didn't bother to call back. Ed, you're welcome to call back, and anybody else is as well. We're probably going to try some format changes with calls. I've already talked about, now that we're streaming the show live, there are a number of fans of the show who want to call in. We start streaming about 15 minutes before the show goes live so they can get a chance to get in early. I've taken some calls late after the show goes off the air. We're on from 4:30 to 6 p.m., and then after the 6 p.m. things when we head out to dinner. But what the show ends up being is whatever the callers call in to talk about. Jeff's got a topic. Some of the co-hosts bring in topics, some don't. We'll talk about the topic. You can call in about whatever you want. You can ask questions. You can talk about what you believe and why. I'd like to try to make sure that phone calls steer away from the applause, thank you for the show, who you guys are great. Don't get me wrong, we really appreciate it, but a lot of people who started watching the show did so because they like to see discussions, debates, contentious calls, whether it's a fairly reasonably good apologist calling in to discuss an issue, somebody questioning something we've said on the show, wanting to get into it in more detail, or somebody wanting to know why we don't die when the sun goes down. Those things do kind of lighten up the show a little bit, and people appreciate it. So I want to try and focus on those calls, but I also want to be fair, and I've gotten positive feedback and negative feedback depending on how we've handled calls. I take all the blame for it because I got my fingers on the buttons. Last week I hung up on Ed because I thought he got a little snotty when it was his turn to talk. I got to have some fun too. But what we may end up doing is giving the individual who calls in a solid minute or so to express their thought, and then give us a chance to reply and see if the conversation is going to go further from there. But I don't want to make things too rigid right now. I don't want to set up a structured debate, and I just want to make sure that the show is as open to people calling in as possible. That doesn't mean that you're not going to get temporarily put on hold, which we'll do on occasion when we're busy talking over each other. It doesn't mean that you're not going to get interrupted, and there's a really good reason why some of you get interrupted, and that is that the arguments from apologists so often take this format of stating assertions A, B, and C, which I would say have some logical fallacy in them, and then building a whole bunch of things off of that, so that we get 10 miles down the road and I've got to backtrack all the way to the beginning to say, yes, but everything you said is based on this fallacy, or whether it be just a simple assumption that God exists, or some other fallacy. And so it's a lot easier if we paused, point out why we disagree with the first point, rather than letting you build an entire argument off of a fallacy, and see if we can correct that. The goal, sincerely, is to try to come to some understanding, some way of communicating where we're not talking past each other, and so that the people watching at home aren't sitting there throwing things at the TV, why did you let him get away with that, or why didn't you let him finish talking? I realize it goes both ways. So we'll probably do some experimenting with that, but I don't want to waste any more time on announcements and TV stuff. Jeff's here.